As the Queen and the rest of his betrayers burn, Griffith revels in watching it. He states that the poison he drank was meant to put him in a near-death-like state in order to fool them, but wouldn't actually kill him. They beg him to spare their lives, but he states that there are no spectators on the battlefield. As he walks away from them, he goes to Minister Foss. Foss, freaking out, asks how he knew that they and him would eventually betray Griffith. Griffith states that he saw fear in Foss's eyes that time before he left to go fight Shooter. And he knew that when a man fears something, he can either succumb to its will or try to destroy it. So not knowing the exact plan, Griffith just assumed his betrayal and took measures to get on top of it. He had a group of outcasts kidnap Foss's daughter and sent him a threatening note to get him on his side. So Foss swapped the poison and escaped the building with his life. He's referring to a scene a few chapters ago, before Griffith left, when he stared at Foss from across the hall. Within that stare, he gathered everything that he knew about Foss. He gathered his body language, his intentions, everything about him. It's like the stare from Griffith broke down Foss. It's like one of the men is clearly stronger in this scenario, and, of course, it's Griffith. But Griffith took it one step further. He wasn't planning an assassination attempt on Foss like he did with Julius. No, instead he just decides that he's going to get Foss to succumb to his will. He saw the weakness in him, saw a way to exploit it, and just decided to do it that way. So with the letter threatening Foss's child, Foss had to swap the poison for something else and then managed to escape the building with his life. So Griffith decides to let him live from now on, knowing that he succumbed to his will. Griffith then lets his daughter go, he pays the men that took her, and then has Guts kill those men so that they have no leverage against him in the future. God damn! See, this is the intelligence of Griffith, the foresight, and the manipulation. But at least he lets his dead kidnappers keep their reward. When I first saw this scene play out in the anime for the first time, this is when I pretty much became scared shitless of Griffith. The things that he is willing to do and the way that he executes his plans. Griffith understands the human psyche. He understands how people are going to react. He understands what he needs to do to get what he wants done. He knows what to say. He knows where to go. He is on top of everything. At least for the moment. After having him kill the kidnappers, Griffith looks to Guts and asks him if he thinks he's cruel for making him do this without the other Hawks knowing. And Guts simply says he understands that it's a step on the path to his dream and it had to be done. The two walk off, and Guts comments that Griffith should see Casca in her dress, wingmanning for her still. Everyone is so happy to see Griffith still alive, and they rejoice, and Griffith does in fact comment on Casca looking good. The Hawks are knighted, and after a 1-month time skip, Guts leaves his armor and his broken sword in his room, deciding to finally leave the Band of the Hawk. In the middle of the night, Casca sees him through the window and then immediately runs down to him. She asks if he really is leaving, wanting him to stay. Judo and Corcus arrive on the scene, and they take Guts into a tavern to talk it over. Meanwhile, Casca rushes to fetch Griffith in an attempt to make Guts stay. The conversation in the bar between these three men I really enjoy, especially Corcus, who admits that without everyone working together they never would have gotten this far. They're about to join the nobles, and he sees this as Guts wanting to throw it all away, throw all that progress away. But Guts is clear about his decision. Wanting to be like Griffith and find a purpose on his own, he decides that he needs to leave, and that he can't stand the idea of Griffith looking down on him. It all goes back to that one overheard conversation, thinking they were equals, but knowing that they're not, at least not in Griffith's eyes. Corcus chews him out for even thinking he could be on Griffith's level to begin in the first place, clearly showing how everyone views Griffith as more than human. He's a symbol of something greater, a mythological figure. To think Guts and him could stand side by side is ridiculous to Corcus. He walks off calling Guts a baby and not able to deal with it anymore. Judo then informs Guts that Corcus actually used to lead a band of thieves until they crossed the Band of the Hawk, and then he became a member of the team. Judo then admits that for himself, he's always been good at many things, but never the best. Of all his skills, not one can he pinpoint that he's meant to have. So instead of being the best of something, he decided to be by the one who is the best, Griffith. And we get the sense that all the Hawk members are basically men whose goals and ambitions never turned out. And maybe by fate's own design, they were never meant to. Fate is a strong theme in the story, and so is the harsh realism of the world. And let's face it, in life, most people's dreams are never fulfilled. The flames burn out. And maybe only infernos like Griffith's can actually be accomplished, and to do so, it takes the heat of many other flames to give to one. Judo walks with Guts as he's leaving, and in one last effort to get him to stay, he mentions Casca. Guts says everyone knows Casca wants to be with Griffith, and then Judo lays out the truth, that if Griffith wants royalty, he will have to marry into it. Charlotte is his ticket. He'll never go for Casca in that way. Also, that Casca views Griffith like worshipping another, idolized in a way that can never be fulfilled. And again, I think that rings true for a lot of people just throughout life. I think a lot of times we just see someone as something special, something more than everything else, and even though we really would want a relationship with them, it wouldn't be how we idolize it in our minds. But even with that being the truth, Guts says he won't go for Casca because he would be no good for her the way that he is now, without purpose. Not to mention, Guts has never been intimate or vulnerable with anyone, which a relationship would require. He wouldn't have the first clue on how to go forward, but at least to know it's nice that Judo ships them. On his way out over the hill, Casca, Pippin, Corcus, and Rickert are all there waiting for him. And so is Griffith. Rickert cries over the thought of him going, and Corcus just says good riddance in more ways than one. As Guts tries to walk by, Griffith unsheathes his sword, reminding Guts that he belongs to him, that he won him in a fight 3 years ago, and that if he wishes to go, he must defeat him now. Guts sees that he is serious, and draws his sword as well. With a great static shot of the two of them raising their weapons in the snow. This is just a clear display of Kentaro Miura's amazing artwork. Casca tries to stop it, but to no avail, and here is an interesting struggle for her. Who does she truly want to win, and for what purpose? Should Griffith win, he will stay, and should Guts win, he'll go, but he will be doing what he wants. 3 years ago, she wouldn't care if Griffith killed him, but now, things aren't so simple. There's a bond between her and Guts that's been created that can't be replaced. Next, we get to see the first ever time we get to read Griffith's thoughts. His inner monologue has never been present in the story so far, probably deliberately to add to his mystique and cunning abilities, but here, as things begin to break down, we see a glimpse inside the mind of Griffith. Griffith thinks of how he blocks Guts' sword, and then a resulting pressure may cause his arm to move slightly and slice through Guts' head, killing him. Griffith contemplates this, but thinks that if he can't have Guts with them, then he doesn't even care. The two of them swing, and Guts cuts Griffith's sword in half and stops his swing just above Griffith's shoulder. Griffith falls to his knees, losing, and Guts walks away. The words, "It's like stumbling on a rock on the roadside," appear. This could be Guts thinking to himself about Griffith. The place you want to go is more distant, farther off. So it's alright, you'll stand up and start walking soon. I really like how this harkens back to when Griffith killed the commander at the Battle of Doldry, the one that he had slept with in order to gain funds for the Band of the Hawk. He said something similar to him, that he was just a stone on Griffith's path. Something that meant nothing to him now, something that he just needed to step over at the time. And here Guts, I believe, is the one speaking, is relating himself to also being a stone. That it's okay. Griffith shouldn't be upset about losing him because Guts is just a stone, one that he just had to step over to get to where he needs to be now. The next chapter begins with Guts sleeping somewhere out in the woods. He's camping and realizing that it's the first time he's slept alone like this in a long time. He wonders if he made the right call. Did he throw away something special for an unforeseen tomorrow? Something I think most people would wonder, did they make the right choice? When we lose one thing for another, we always wonder what life would have been like if we stayed on that original path. Maybe in a relationship or something otherwise. The grass is always greener on the other side, but eventually you need to make a choice. But anyway, this giant skeleton motherfucker shows up and freaks the fuck out of Guts. He comes out of nowhere and gives Guts the same feeling and chills that Zod did. He's basically on a gigantic horse, looks gigantic himself, looks like a skeleton, has a skull for a head that's got pointy spikes on it like a crown, a crazy sword, and he looks at Guts and he calls him the Struggler, and then delivers to him a cryptic message, that in 1 year the eclipse will be upon him, and that he has been able to escape death time and time again, perhaps destined to die but constantly evading it. He tells him to continue to struggle and to endure, and then leaves into the shadows of the night. This character is completely left out of the anime series, and I have no idea why, as he serves to be very, very important. But that's all we get of him for right now. Back in Midland, Princess Charlotte is in her room alone and gets a tapping on her window. She goes to it and sees Griffith in a tree drenched with rainwater. She lets him in, excited as she hasn't spoken to him since months before he left for the battle. Griffith seizes her in an embrace and kisses her. She is of course shy and nervous, but looks up to him so much that she goes with it. He pushes her onto the bed and begins to, well, he fucks the ever-loving shit out of her like he takes Princess Charlotte to Pound Town. Let's not put this delicately. Taking her virginity and giving her probably the biggest ride of her life. But all for a purpose. Griffith is here acting out. Losing Guts has put him into a panic inside of his mind. Guts was his most valuable asset in attaining his goals. Without Guts, Griffith is trying to skip 10 steps ahead. He wants to completely win the princess over now, having her in his back pocket to marry. All while fucking her, he thinks about Guts leaving and uses that rage to nail her even harder. This is the first time we really see Griffith act out of emotion rather than contemplative planning. All the foresight he had and every other aspect worked perfectly to his favor, simply because of how thought out it was. How he was able to backpedal his emotions and logically commit to his plans. This is just a simple fear and uncertainty just boiling to the surface. And the sad part of it is, if he had just waited, things might not have gone so wrong. For a housemate comes along and sneaks a look through the peephole as this is happening. The next morning, Charlotte awakens in her bed with Griffith gone, but the little magnet that she gave him a while back before he left to fight for Tudor was left there. It was his promise to return it. Griffith hops over the castle walls, only to be greeted by dozens of guards who surround him. And then the king bursts into Charlotte's bedroom, and though she tries to cover it from him, the king sees hickeys on her body. He then moves her bedsheets to see blood from taking her virginity. He's filled with a boiling rage, and it's time to send Griffith to the dungeon. See, this is one of the most interesting parts of Berserk, simply because we're seeing Griffith act out so much of emotion. The only other time we saw him have this kind of visceral reaction was when he was in the lake in Casca's flashback, when he was just coming to terms with the fact that he has to attain his goal no matter what in order to make the deaths of his soldiers around him worth it, most particularly the little boy that was killed. That he seemed to be the only soldier that he actually had an emotional reaction over seeing die. But now losing Guts also forces him to have such a visceral emotional reaction. And I go back to thinking maybe it is because that Griffith loves Guts. And maybe he doesn't understand it. Maybe he just doesn't understand what that kind of emotion is because he's so forward-thinking and strategic with all of his plans. His life is a strategy. His life is not based on emotion. His life has been based on clear stepping stones to get what he wants. And so when faced with emotion, he doesn't quite understand it. At least that's my interpretation. That's kind of how I tend to lean into the situation. And with Charlotte, he's using Charlotte to get what he wants, to have the princess completely under his thumb, to have her completely under his control, so that when the time comes, he can marry her easily. But again, he still could have done this if he would just taken his time. But losing Guts causes him to act rashly. And it's from this moment forward that we'll see that he blames Guts for everything that happens beyond this point. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying my Berserk series. Please give this a thumbs up and stay tuned for the next video.